What if I told you that the greatest mind in human history spent his final years haunted by thousands of unfinished pages sketches of flying machines that never flew, anatomical studies that went unpublished, inventions that remained mere ink on parchment? What if the man we celebrate as the ultimate Renaissance genius carried with him, until his last breath, a secret collection of what he called his catalogue of imperfection, a hidden notebook filled not with triumphs but with the crushing weight of dreams that died in his hands? Leonardo da Vinci didn't leave behind a legacy of pure brilliance. He left behind something far more human, far more terrifying, evidence of his own paralysis. And Carl Jung would tell you that what Leonardo was hiding wasn't just failure, it was the most dangerous aspect of the psyche, the one thing that can destroy genius from within. You're about to discover what that is, and more importantly, why it's destroying you right now, in this very moment, as you hesitate to pursue the very thing you were born to create. But I need to warn you, what you're about to hear will make you deeply uncomfortable, because by the time we're done you'll realize that Leonardo's tragedy isn't a historical curiosity, it's a mirror, and the face staring back at you from that mirror is your own. Picture Florence, 1519. An old man lies dying in a French chateau, far from the Tuscan hills where he was born. His hands, once capable of rendering the sublime mystery of a smile that would captivate centuries, now tremble as they rest upon a leather-bound volume. This isn't the notebook his patron saw. This isn't the collection of masterpieces that would make him immortal. This is something else entirely, something he kept hidden, wrapped in cloth, tucked away from prying eyes. Inside this book are not masterpieces, they are ghosts. Page after page of half-realized visions. A bronze horse that was never cast, 75 tons of metal that existed only in clay before being melted down for cannons. A flying machine whose wings never caught the wind, despite years of studying birds in flight. Despite filling pages with calculations of lift and drag. Churches never built, though the architectural drawings were flawless. Paintings never finished, though the compositions were revolutionary. Mathematical equations that led nowhere, though the questions they asked were centuries ahead of their time. The Mona Lisa herself technically unfinished, her left hand still lacking the final layers of glaze he envisioned, her background still incomplete in his perfectionist eyes. Leonardo would spend hours, sometimes days, staring at a single square inch of canvas, brush loaded with paint, unable to make the stroke, unable to commit, unable to accept that what his hand could create would never match what his mind could conceive. His assistants would watch him circle a painting for weeks, making microscopic adjustments, adding translucent layer after translucent layer, chasing a vision that retreated further with each approach. But here's what the history books don't tell you, what they can't tell you because it requires diving into the dark waters of the psyche. Leonardo didn't fail because he lacked talent. He didn't abandon projects because he was lazy or distracted or undisciplined. He failed because he possessed something that Carl Jung identified as the shadow side of genius, the pathological need for the unattainable, perfection that exists only in the realm of pure potential. Every time Leonardo put brush to canvas or pen to paper, he was engaged in a battle between the infinite possibility of the imagination and the finite limitation of physical reality. And possibility, that seductive mistress, always won. Think about what this means. Really think about it. Leonardo could envision things that wouldn't be technologically possible for 400 years. He could see helicopters, tanks, parachutes, submarines all rendered in exquisite detail in his mind's eye. But the materials of his time would rope, canvas, ironwork, crude approximations of what would be needed. So every creation was a compromise. Every invention was a betrayal of the vision. And for a mind like Leonardo's, compromise felt like death. Imagine being Leonardo in those moments. You close your eyes and you see it, the perfect invention, the flawless painting, the breakthrough that will change everything. It shimmers before you in the theater of your mind with crystalline clarity. The flying machine doesn't just fly, it soars with the elegance of a bird, defying gravity with mathematical precision. Every angle is perfect. Every measurement is exact. The machine and the pilot move as one, dancing through the air with the grace of a swallow. You can feel the wind on your face. You can see Florence spreading below you like a jeweled tapestry. You are Icarus, but this time the wings don't fail. This time, you've solved it. This time, you've conquered the impossible. Then you open your eyes. You look at the wood and canvas before you. You pick up your tools. You make the first connection, the first joint. You step back and look at what you've created, and already you feel it, the gap. The unbridgeable chasm between the vision in your mind and the crude reality appearing before you. This isn't what you saw. The proportions are slightly off. The weight distribution isn't quite right. The materials resist your vision. This is a betrayal. This is a lie. This is a corruption of the pure idea. So you stop, you make a note, you sketch an improvement. You tell yourself you'll return when you've learned more about aerodynamics, when you've studied more birds, when you've found better materials, when you've solved this one final problem. You walk away. You start something new, something that still exists in that perfect realm of potential, untainted by the messy reality of manifestation. But the time is never right. The materials are never good enough. You are never ready enough. Because the real issue isn't skill, it's that you're trying to drag the infinite into the finite, to trap the eternal in the temporal. And that, Jung would say, is not just impossibly, it's the very definition of psychological inflation. The ego, swollen with visions of perfection, refuses to humble itself before the necessary imperfection of existence. Now, let me take you deeper into the psychological mechanism at work here, because this is where Jung's genius illuminates Leonardo's tragedy. What Leonardo was experiencing wasn't simple perfectionism, it was the dominance of what Jung called the pure eternus, the eternal child archetype. The pure is one of the most seductive and dangerous archetypes in the collective unconscious. It's the part of the psyche that lives in the realm of pure potential, of infinite possibility, of divine inspiration. But pure is Peter Pan, forever young, forever free, forever soaring above the mundane concerns of earthbound existence. It's the part of you that dreams big, that sees the vision, that touches the divine. It's the source of creativity, innovation, transcendence. Without the pure, we would never reach for the stars. We would never imagine beyond what already exists. We would never evolve. The pure is necessary. The pure is sacred. The pure is the spark of the divine in human consciousness. But the pure has a fatal flaw, a shadow aspect that Jung spent years studying. It refuses to commit. It refuses to descend from the heavens of imagination into the earth of manifestation. It refuses to grow up. It refuses to accept limitation. Why? Because manifestation means death, the death of infinite possibility. It means choosing this specific form over all other possible forms. It means accepting that your flying machine will be made of wood and canvas and metal, clunky, imperfect, earthbound materials rather than the ethereal substance of dreams. It means your painting will be constrained by the limitations of pigment and human perception and the two-dimensional surface of canvas. The pure would rather die than make that choice. It would rather preserve the perfect dream than create the imperfect reality. And so it keeps you in perpetual preparation, perpetual research, perpetual planning, always gathering more knowledge, always refining the vision, always waiting for the perfect moment that will never come. Leonardo exhibited every symptom of pure dominance. He would start projects with explosive enthusiasm, filling pages with sketches and notes, his mind on fire with possibility. Then, as the reality of execution set in, as the gap between vision and manifestation became apparent, the enthusiasm would cool. He would slow down. He would get distracted. He would find reasons to delay. He would accept new commissions, new projects, new visions that were still safely housed in potential rather than exposed to the judgment of reality. His notebooks are filled with statements like, "I will finish this when I understand more about the nature of water," or "this requires further study of human anatomy," or "the technology does not yet exist for this vision." Always a reason, always a justification, always tomorrow. And here's where Jung's principle of enantiodromia enters the law that everything, when pushed to its extreme, transforms into its opposite. This is one of Jung's most profound insights into the nature of the psyche. Any quality, any strength, any virtue, when taken to an extreme, when allowed to dominate the psyche without balance, inevitably transforms into its shadow opposite. Leonardo's obsession with perfection, his refusal to settle for anything less than the absolute ideal, didn't preserve his genius, it murdered it. His greatest strength became his greatest weakness, the very sensitivity that allowed him to see the subtle play of light on water, the delicate gradations of shadow on a face, the complex mechanics of bird flight. This same sensitivity made it impossible for him to accept anything less than perfect representation. The gift became the curse. The man who could see everything ended up creating comparatively little, approximately 15 paintings in 70 years of life. Think about that. 70 years, a genius mind operating at full capacity, and only 15 paintings completed to a degree where he would release them to the world. Thousands of pages of notes and sketches, most never shared, never published, never realized. Entire volumes of discoveries in anatomy, geology, botany, engineering, hydrodynamics locked away, hidden, kept in potential rather than risked in manifestation. Do you see it yet? Do you feel it? That uncomfortable recognition creeping up your spine? That tightness in your chest that tells you this isn't just about some Renaissance painter who died 500 years ago? Because Leonardo's notebook isn't in a museum in France. It's in your desk drawer. It's on your hard drive in that folder you never open. It's in the cloud storage labeled "Old Projects" or "Someday Maybe" or "When I'm Ready." It's every manuscript you started with burning enthusiasm and abandoned at chapter 3 when it stopped matching the glowing masterpiece in your head. It's every business idea you researched for months but never launched because the market conditions weren't quite right. It's every canvas you primed but never painted. Every song you heard in your mind but never recorded. Every relationship you imagined but never pursued because the real person couldn't match your fantasy. Every version of yourself you've envisioned but never become because the journey seemed too messy, too uncertain, too imperfect. You've been doing exactly what Leonardo did. You've been worshipping at the altar of someday, bowing before the tyranny of perfect timing, sacrificing the messy beauty of creation on the altar of impossible standards. And you've been telling yourself the same lies Leonardo told himself. You tell yourself it's because you care about quality. You're not one of those people who rushes half-baked ideas into the world. You're thoughtful, you're thorough, you're strategic. You're waiting for the right moment, gathering more knowledge, refining your skills, preparing properly. You're being responsible, you're being smart, you're being professional. But Jung would see through this immediately. He'd recognize it for what it really is, the shadow, the hidden part of yourself that you don't want to face, that you've dressed up in the respectable clothing of perfectionism and preparation, the part that's terrified not of failure, but of the definitive judgment that comes with completion. As long as your masterpiece remains unfinished, it remains perfect in potential. As long as your business idea stays in the planning phase, it remains brilliant in theory. As long as your novel exists only in outline form, it remains a work of genius in your imagination. The moment you declare it done, the moment you release it into the world, you must face the truth. It's not perfect, it will be criticized, it will be judged, it will be compared, it will be found wanting. And if your creation is imperfect, what does that say about you? This is the secret shame Leonardo hid from the world. Not that he failed, but that he was afraid. Afraid of being fully known, afraid of being definitively judged, afraid of discovering that even his magnificent mind, even his extraordinary talent, couldn't bridge the gap between divine imagination and human capability. So he hid behind the mask of later, and not quite ready and needs more work. Later, when I've studied more anatomy. Later, when I've perfected my sfumato technique. Later, when the bronze is available. Later, when the patron is more reasonable. Later, when I truly understand the mathematics of proportion. Later, when the world is ready. Later, when I'm ready. But later is the lie we tell ourselves to avoid the one thing that Jung insisted was essential for psychological wholeness: confrontation with limitation, integration with the finite, acceptance of imperfection, descent from the realm of the pure into the realm of the senex, the wise elder who knows that creation requires sacrifice, that manifestation requires limitation, that wholeness includes imperfection. The senex understands what the pure cannot accept, that done is better than perfect, that real is more valuable than ideal, that the imperfect creation released into the world has the power to touch lives, inspire minds, change reality, while the perfect creation locked in imagination has the power to do nothing except feed your ego and starve your soul. Listen to this carefully, because this is where the tragedy deepens. Leonardo knew this. At some level, he understood. His notebooks contain passages where he rails against his own tendency to delay, where he berates himself for not finishing, where he recognizes the pattern. He wrote, "Art is never finished, only abandoned," a statement that sounds wise but is actually a confession of his imprisonment. He wrote about the danger of endless refinement. He warned against the paralysis of perfectionism. But knowing the trap and escaping the trap are two different things. Jung emphasized this repeatedly. Insight without integration is worthless. You can understand your shadow perfectly and still be completely controlled by it. Leonardo saw his pattern but couldn't break it. Why? Because seeing the pattern required only intellect, but breaking the pattern required something far more difficult: humility, the willingness to be imperfect, the courage to be judged, the strength to say this is good enough even when your vision shows you it could be better. The irony, the tragic, beautiful, devastating irony is that Leonardo's unfinished works, his failures, are what we treasure most today. Go to any museum, stand before his sketches, the rough anatomical studies, with his mirror-written notes crowding the margins, the quick gesture drawings of hands and faces, the engineering diagrams with their crossouts and corrections. These imperfect, unfinished, messy explorations give us more insight into his genius than the Mona Lisa ever could. Why? Because they show us the process. They show us the humanity. They show us the struggle. They make him real. They make him accessible. They make him matter. The finished paintings are intimidating. They're so perfect they seem almost inhuman, created by some godlike entity we could never hope to emulate. But the sketches, the unfinished studies, these whisper to us, he was human, he struggled, he doubted, he tried and failed and tried again. And so can you. What if the same is true for you? What if your imperfect creation, released into the world, would matter more than your perfect dream, dying in darkness? What if the very thing you're ashamed of, the gap between your vision and your current ability, is precisely what makes your work valuable? Because that gap is where your humanity lives. That gap is where others can see themselves. That gap is the crack where the light gets in. Now comes your moment of truth, your workshop of consciousness. I'm going to give you 3 questions, 3 diagnostic tools that Jung himself might have used to help Leonardo see his own shadow, and that you must use to help yourself right now. But I want you to do something different than you've done before. Don't just think about these questions. Don't just nod along and move on. Actually stop. Get a piece of paper. Write down your answers, because insight without action is just another form of pure energies, and safely in the realm of knowing without descending into the realm of doing. First question: what is your flying machine? What is the project, the dream, the creation that you can see so vividly in your mind that it takes your breath away but that you haven't manifested? Because the reality you could create doesn't match the vision you can imagine. Be specific. Don't say my business or my art. Name it exactly. Describe it in detail. What does it look like in your mind? What does it feel like? What impact would it have? And then, this is crucial, write down the specific reason you tell yourself you can't start or can't finish it yet. What's the excuse? What's the condition that needs to be met first? Write it down. Name it, because you cannot integrate what you won't acknowledge. Second question, where is your pure in control? In what areas of your life are you living in pure potential, refusing to commit, refusing to descend into the messy work of manifestation because it feels like a betrayal of the perfect vision? This isn't just about creative projects. The pure can dominate any area of life. Is it your art, your business, your relationship? Are you staying single because no real person matches your ideal? Or staying in a relationship while fantasizing about the perfect partner? Your body, are you waiting to start that health journey until you can do it perfectly? Your spiritual practice, constantly reading and learning but never committing to a path. Your career, always planning the next move but never making it. Your friendships, keeping people at arm's length because they don't meet some imaginary standard. Identify the specific domain where you're playing it safe in the clouds rather than risking the fall to earth. Third question, and this is the most crucial, the one that will tell you everything you need to know about whether you're ready to break free. What would happen if you gave yourself permission to be Leonardo, complete with all his flaws? Not Leonardo the myth, the superhuman genius we learned about in school, but Leonardo the man, brilliant yet paralyzed, visionary yet afraid, capable of seeing heaven but terrified to build it here on earth with imperfect materials and imperfect skills. What if you accepted that your creation will be imperfect? What if you decided that done and flawed serves the world more than perfect and imaginary? What if you gave yourself permission to be a beginner, to be mediocre, to be human? What specific action would you take in the next 72 hours, not someday, not when you're ready, but in the next 72 hours if you truly integrated this truth? Write that action down. Make it concrete. Make it small enough that you can't rationalize your way out of it, but significant enough that it represents real descent from potential into manifestation. Not, I'll start planning my novel, that's still pure energy, but I'll write 500 words of terrible first draft. Not, I'll research business strategies, but I'll create a landing page and show it to 10 people. Not, I'll think about reaching out, but I'll send the message. Whatever it is, make it real, make it earthbound, make it imperfect. Because here's what Jung discovered through decades of working with human beings, and what Leonardo never fully grasped despite all his genius. Wholeness doesn't come from perfection. It comes from integration. It comes from bringing the high down to the low, the infinite into the finite, the vision into the visible. It comes from accepting that the gap between what you imagine and what you create isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's the space where your humanity lives. It's the signature of your soul. It's the thing that makes your work yours and not anyone else's. The pure sees that gap and recoils in horror. The integrated psyche sees that gap and recognizes it as sacred, the place where spirit meets matter, where the eternal encounters the temporal, where the divine becomes human. That gap is where art happens. That gap is where life happens. That gap is where you become real. Leonardo died believing he had wasted his life. The last words attributed to him were an apology. I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have. Can you imagine? The man who painted the Last Supper, who drew the Vitruvian Man, who envisioned the future dying with regret, dying with shame, dying convinced he had failed because his reality didn't match his vision. He saw his notebooks of unfinished dreams as evidence of failure, as proof that he wasn't good enough, smart enough, skilled enough. He saw them as his shame, his secret catalog of inadequacy. But we see them as windows into genius. We see them as treasures. We see them as the most valuable things he left behind. We treasure them not despite their incompleteness, but because of it. Because they're honest, because they're human, because they show us that genius isn't about perfection, it's about persistence in the face of imperfection. What are you treating as your shameful failure that might actually be your greatest gift to the world? What are you hiding in your own notebook of imperfection that someone desperately needs to see? What rough sketch, what half-finished attempt, what imperfect manifestation are you withholding because it doesn't match the pristine vision in your mind? The pure must die so that the creator can be born. Not die literally, not be destroyed, but be integrated. Brought down from its lonely throne in the clouds and married to the Senex, to earthly wisdom, to the acceptance of limitation. The dream must become dirt-stained so that it can become real. Your notebook of failures must be opened, not hidden, because inside those imperfect pages is the only version of you that can actually change someone's life. The perfect you is inspirational but useless. The perfect you is an idol, not a human being. The perfect you creates nothing but fantasies and excuses. But the imperfect you, creating imperfect things and releasing them anyway, that version transforms the world. That version gives others permission to be imperfect too. That version breaks the spell of perfectionism that keeps humanity trapped in perpetual potential. You have a choice to make right now. Will you be Leonardo, dying with regret, surrounded by notebooks of unrealized dreams? Or will you be what Leonardo could have been if he'd integrated his shadows, someone who creates imperfectly but prolifically, who manifests messily but meaningfully, who chooses real over ideal every single time? If this excavation into the depths of creative paralysis resonated with you, if you felt that uncomfortable recognition of your own hidden notebooks, if you saw yourself in Leonardo's tragedy, then subscribe to this journey of psychological archaeology. Because we're going to keep digging into the shadows that the greatest minds in history struggled with and that you're struggling with right now. We're going to keep exploring the gaps between vision and reality, potential and manifestation, the divine and the human. We're going to keep integrating what has been rejected. We're going to keep bringing the unconscious into consciousness. We're going to keep descending from the clouds into the earth where real creation happens. Here's your truth, the truth Jung would want you to hear. You will never feel ready. The vision will never perfectly match the reality. The gap will always exist. Your creation will always be imperfect. You will always see how it could be better. And that's exactly why you must create anyway. Not despite your humanity, but because of it. Not when you're perfect, but while you're still beautifully, necessarily, essentially flawed. Leonardo's notebook of failures wasn't his shame. It was his truth. It was his humanity. It was the most honest thing he ever created. And your notebook, your collection of unfinished dreams, abandoned projects, imperfect attempts isn't your shame either. It's your curriculum. It's your training ground. It's your evidence that you've been trying, struggling, reaching for something beyond your current grasp. The question is, will you keep it hidden until you die, apologizing for your imperfection? Or will you open it today, right now, and start turning those imperfect dreams into imperfect reality? What's yours?